Namaste, Geeta Ramanujam. She's a master storyteller, academician, and trainer who wears many hats. She founded Kathalaya, a trust, in 1998, and later Kathalaya's International Academy of Storytelling that offers certified courses in storytelling recognized globally with affiliations to universities in the US, UK, and Sweden. She has personally trained 93,000 people in the art of storytelling and has traveled to over 44 countries of the world with her storytelling presentations and performances and trainings. Won accolades like the Best Storytellers Award at Brazil, the Best Story Narrators Award from the Government of Tamil Nadu, and recently being mentioned by Prime Minister Modi ji in his Mann Ki Baat program. From the storytelling fraternity, as a storyteller, I'm really delighted to personally invite Geeta to please share her story of the storytelling journey. Over to you, Geeta.
Thank you, Deepa ji. Thank you, Shivakumar ji, and all the people associated. Where do I begin? Okay, so let me start from the present. A storyteller. No, it was not even heard of before. Every time I said, I'm a storyteller, and everyone came and said, what? What is storytelling? Because this was way back in 1996. But even before that, let me go back to 1900. In 1900, there were a lot of stories being told in the houses, and I just want to go back because where does the storytelling interest come? Where does the spiritual journey into storytelling come? Just like Dr. Ghosh was saying, does it come from the heart or does it come from feeling for others? It comes from a lot of giving, let me tell you that. Not thinking about the ego and the self, but thinking about others. And where does that gene come from? So I just wanted to go back again because my grandfather, M.S. Doraiswamy Iyengar, that's his name, and he was a chief engineer of Travancore State. He was asked by the Diwan at that time in 1900 to build a palace. And so he was all ready, and every day he used to read the Ramayana. So in those days, there was no electricity, no lights, after 5 o'clock. So every day he would read the Ramayana and put a little bookmark. In those days, it was made of ivory because there was no elephant protection or anything in those days. Nothing was talked about. So he put that and he would go to sleep. Sleep early and get up by 4 o'clock. And he had to actually administer about 300 people who were working on that plot. So that night, he read the Sundarakandam and he went to sleep. He had a very strange dream. Now he rushes early morning at 4 o'clock with the hurricane lamp. In those days, there was this hurricane lamp. So he runs to that plot. He takes a spade and he starts to dig. Now, as he starts digging, my grandmother is worried because my grandfather has never left without a cup of coffee. Every day he must have coffee. And that's a habit I still have. So he would get up and have a cup of coffee. So my grandmother runs with the decoction and she's doing this and she's running behind him. And she's wondering where this Manishan is going. The Brahmana enga pora. So she goes. And then all the people hear the sound and they all come running and says, Ayya, why are you doing this? And he says, I want you to dig in this place. And so they all get together. And then the digging starts. And around afternoon or noon, they find a crown. And he says, I know what it is. So he goes back to the king. In those days, the kings were so gracious. And he says, Raja, I think I don't want to build a palace with your permission. Can I build a temple? He says, why, sir? He says, because I know what it is. Sure, anything that you want. And so He took vrat for 40 days. And they dug the whole thing. And what did they find below? A huge, big, you know what I'm talking about, with a crown. The Hanuman. And he lifted that Hanuman and built a temple around it. Today it's called Suchindram. And it's between the border of Tamil Nadu and Kerala. And if you go behind that statue, you will find an inscription saying, erected by M.S. Doreswamy Iyengar. And that's my grandfather. And he did a lot of giving. He died very young. Just before dying, the Kanyakumari, the floods were all coming in because he was in Tirunelveli then. And he was in charge of Kanyakumari, and they all said, all water is coming in. And so he built a wall. He built a wall, and he had to build one more, he had to put just one more brick. But as he was about to put that brick, he came home, and my grandmother came and gave him the Ganga water, and he passed away. Well, I can go on continuing my grandmother and my grandfather's story, but that's not the intention of this talk. The giving, the sharing, it comes from a lineage, isn't it? We want to give. So here I was, wanting to give, and again, carried through by my mother. My father also came from a very beautiful family. Both of them were very apart from each other as far as status went. So my mother and my father had to move. My mother was from Tanjore, and she came all the way to Bombay because my father found a job there. Now, I grew up and I was born not too bad in the way I was delivered. And my mother says it was an easy delivery inside the house. Can you believe? Because there was this famous music director called Lakshmikant Pyarelal. His mother was a midwife, she was our neighbor, and she delivered me. So here I was listening to music from day one. So Lakshmikant would play Nagari Nagari Payal Baje from Mother India, and I would listen and go running and go to his house. So I started talking Marathi. And Tai, who was his mother, would take me and ask my mother my mother would ask, what is she talking? So you see, I know that you can pick up a language very easily when you're young. So here I grew up in Bombay, and well, I'm going to skip a lot of things because my mother didn't want me to lose out on my tradition. So she told me a lot of stories in Tamil because I went to a school where English was the medium of instruction. We had a lot of British hangover even in the 1960s. Okay, so English had to be spoken very well, and also Hindi, second language, third language, Marathi. To say Kai Paise. But who was there to teach me Tamil, which was my language? The only way that could be taught was when my mother told me stories. And when would she tell me stories? When I was helping her, archifying, doing something before going to school. And she would use the stories as a proverb. She'd say, don't be Kalida Kanda Kutti Chavare, she'd say. So I'll ask her, what does that mean? And the story would come out. Another story. Don't be like that housefly, that forgot its name. Amma, what's that story? So it was an associated tale. And she would ask me to recall, and this was the best part of it. Because I wouldn't get her, and she'll say, no, that's particularly, you have to get her. It's not Tamil, it's Tamil. Okay. My father, very busy, but in the night would come back and he would tell me stories about, you to Brutus, then fall Caesar. Cannons to the right of them, cannons to the left of them, cannons behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed up with shot and shell, while horse and hero fell. Into that valley of death rode the 600. Because he taught me an important lesson. He said, don't react, respond to the situations. There are always people lesser than you. Good lessons to learn. But the best part is we all went out because there was only a radio in the house. Listener's request, Vinata Geet Mala. Nothing else. Lot of books to read. Saturday, Sunday, go out. And go and listen to stories of other people. But also movies, also drama, also dance, also culture, so many things. So all this happened. And when I came back, you know, when you're a child, you just grasp everything, isn't it? Everything gets into you. So I would come back and I would be very good with imitating. So I would go to the cartoons and say, hey, Tweety is my name. I think I saw another putty cat. He wants a duck. Hello. बदतमीज कहीं का, idiot कहीं का. आशा परेख, चले जाओ यहां से. And then I'm just keep pissing and pissing and pissing. I suicide. Dharmendra. So I would imitate. Seriana Poti, Veerappa. So I was good. I became a family entertainer. All the people would gather, my mother, my parents would call every other person for lunch and dinner, and that's how I still didn't know that I had these traits. It was all fun, isn't it? And then, of course, you grew up, and there was only one thing that my parents had in life. Get her married, and you have to have children. And they didn't ask me what I wanted to become, because those days, ladies were not asked all that. Graduation panni edu vanalu pannalam. So I did economics when I was doing second year. There comes my husband. We see each other. It was just about 10 minutes, and he liked me, I liked him. That's what they assume. And so the marriage was fixed and I got married. Okay, done. Now I had to go to Canada. So there, the journey again was not very easy. But after I finished, I came back. I had my baby in 1980, and in 1982, I got my first job as a nursery school teacher. So when I went into that school, all the children, they'll be crying. Now, how do I get the attention of the children? You grew up on stories, so naturally, it's a story that comes to you. And so I saw a boy having lollipop, and I said, once upon a time, there was a boy who was having a yellow color lollipop. And then his sister wanted another lollipop, and he said, she wanted a red color lollipop. So there I built up the story. All the children gathered. They had stopped crying. And I thought, I didn't know I was telling a story because I was just using a tool. And that's how my nursery school career began. I became a storyteller, but they didn't call me that. They called me Lollipop Auntie. I finished my graduation. I went on to do my post-graduation. I did it on my own. I didn't want to be dependent on my husband at all for a lot of reasons, because I was now beginning to build my career psychologically, financially, and professionally. So here I drew the 3 lines and I said, I will not mix my personal and my professional career. So there I went, joined school, and my schooling took me 14 long years. 1996. Suddenly they found that I was telling a lot of stories for social studies and English and talking about the ape man and talking about a fish, frog and turtle near the lake, talking about Hitopadesha, talking about our Shastras, the Vedas, everything about history, near the trees. Children were climbing on the trees and listening to me. And they said, what kind of a teacher is she? Can't she look into the eyes of the children and tell them a story, even if she wants to teach history? That's not the way to teach history. Because I always wanted to find something new, because I was a curious child. I wanted to know why we have to have this methodology of education. Why should we sit in one bench for so long, from period after period after period? So I took them out in spaces, told them stories. And then they put me into the library because I thought I'll keep my mouth shut. Well, it didn't happen. And so I started, because they were not reading the books, and I said, he walked and walked and walked into that deep jungle. And as he walked, there was just the moonlight in the sky, the rustling of leaves as he trampled over them, and he opened the door and ding, the bell would go. And they would say, tell us what happened. I said, if you read from page 38 in Wuthering Heights, you'll get the rest of the story. So that's how I got them interested in reading and in classics. And someone was listening to this and said, hey, that's a wonderful idea. You're telling stories. This summer, I'm going to have the first summer camp ever in the city. You're going to tell stories there. Let's see what to call you. What do we call this workshop? Shall we call it a creative writing workshop? No. Can we call it the Katha workshop? No. Let's call it storytelling workshop. What do you feel? Is it okay? So there I was. 1 week, 1996, a camp, and 7 days, I had 7 stories from different genres, epics, legends, myths, fables, fairy tales, everything that one could think of. I slept only at 2 every night and got up at 4 o'clock because I started doing my research into stories. And there I was, the last day for the fables, and I told the story, once upon a time there was a lion.
And there's this little mouse which says, oh, please let me go because I won't hurt you.
Okay, go. The rat goes to his mother and mother says, what happened, Putta?
Mummy, I would have been somebody's lunch, but I escaped.
What did you say?
I promised that lion that I will help him one day.
You must keep up your promise, okay?
Okay, Mummy.
And another day, in the net.
Hey, if you shout so much, I can't help you, yeah. I can't think at all. Just move back a little bit.
Now the big lion had to listen to the little one. Moved back with the net.
You told me you won't eat me.
No, you're my friend. A friend in need is a friend indeed. I ended the story. Everyone went back home. The next day, in the Times of India, there was a column. That was how it was translated. Sounds coming from a room. And who is this? A storyteller in action. If you want to contact her, this is her number. Now, that was divinity. And that was exactly the moment, it was a turning point in my life. And there was a lady, a principal from Madurai, who was passing by. She read this and she called me and she said, I want you to come and train 300 teachers in my school. I said, what? I'm not done training in my life. She said, you can. First of all, I had to find a story. I know I had a lot of books, it's a lot of stories, but what is the story that I'm going to get? And that's when I went to what today I'm grateful for, Arunachala. One of the friends called me and said, why don't you come to Tiruvannamalai? My father had talked a lot about it, but I hadn't visited. So I went to Tiruvannamalai, and there was this librarian who said, go round the mountain and go alone and take the forest path. The spirituality happened. And there I went around the mountain, and as I went around the mountain, I saw the shadow of a bird sit on the shoulder of this mountain. And the whole story came to me. And there was what people call the Brahmand, which is full of electrons, protons, and electricity. And there was an electricity, I was all wired up inside me. All the wires were ready, only the plug had to be switched on. So what happened at that time? That story from that mountain. So can the mountain speak? Somebody asked, is there a silent language? Yes, because the mountain spoke. I could hear, I could feel, it touched me on all sides. And when that story, when that connection hit my heart, there was one zzz, zzz. You know that spark, right? I was excited. I was thrilled, but only the first part of the story, mind you. And then I went to Madurai and I told this story. There was a huge, big mountain. And when they listened, I had got the message. And that became my story for training. And then, how do I continue with storytelling? Because my salary was 2,000 rupees. 3 of us joined and 6,000 rupees we invested. And we said, let's call it Kathalaya Trust. And that's how we began, just with 6,000 rupees. How do we sustain ourselves? I had resigned. I wanted to start this. I wanted to give. You know why? Not because I was in Valley School, because I saw when I was telling stories to the children there were the rural school children who would also come and listen. And I wanted to reach out to them. So I resigned. My personal life was at its peak. My professional life, 0. And I started. And then, you know, divinity is so great. There was a person from the India Foundation for the Arts and said, you know what, come for an interview. 6 rounds of interview, I got a grant. 1-year grant to take storytelling to schools. To what kind of schools? Rural schools. Yes, that was where my heart was. So from that day, 1998, when we formed the trust, we started reaching out, and we reached out to nearly 500 to 600 rural schools, not at the same time, but one by one. The deaf mute, the mentally challenged. So we devised, so my whole journey from 1998 to 2009 nearly was with rural schools and the rural millennia. And that's where my heart is still now. Why did I stop that? Or why am I not doing enough of it? Because it is very fund dependent. Now that's another question that I always had. Storytelling, people ask, what is storytelling? Can we see results? Because when you give paints for a school, you can see the class painted. But how do you measure storytelling? How do you tell people that children are trained, they are healed, they are better? You don't have to spend 7 periods in English. If you spend 2 periods, it's enough if you tell it through a story. I went to the BEOs, I went to the IAS officers, I went everywhere. I carried my bags going all over Delhi, going to all the funding agencies saying, please give us a fund because we want to do this. Well, I am grateful because Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, the Ford Foundation, the Tata Trust, they all came forward on their own to say, we will fund you, please go ahead. So I did do a lot of work, and at the same time, the one question was, how will you sustain yourself, Geeta? So I can't be dependent only on the funds. So my parallel line started. How do I sustain storytelling? How do I have storytelling continuing? And that's when I thought, because I got what we call as the Ashoka Fellowship on an exchange program. I went to Japan, I went to Singapore, and I went to South Africa. And then I finally landed. One day I went to US for a wedding. I knocked into a lady in the Library of Congress. She wrote to a person called Jimmy Neal Smith, and I had no money absolutely because I had worked for 3 months to gather just my plane fare to go to US, because my friend, who was also a storyteller, said she will put me up and she will take me to her nephew's wedding. And there, Jimmy Neal Smith gives me a call and says, you will be the guest of honor for my storytelling. And I said, I don't have money to take a plane and come to your center. And he said, I will send it. And I will also pay your fare back, but you will be the guest of honor for my festival. And there I was, in front of 10,000 people, telling them a story. And on the last day, to 42 storytellers who were part of that festival. And you know, like the wish granting fairy, Jimmy Neal Smith asked me only one question. Geeta, tell me what you want. And I said, I want to start an academy for storytelling because I want to train storytellers so that those storytellers can go to children, because I cannot duplicate myself. I cannot replicate myself. And this doesn't have to die. It has to spread. And that's how I started my academy of storytelling in 2003 with Jimmy Neal Smith's help. And today we have completed 175 batches of storytellers. And if you see any storyteller, I'm not bragging, I don't want to trumpet myself. Most of the storytelling that has spread is because of our academy. A lot of storytellers who are also presenting today have gone through our academy and have got the interest in storytelling. So storytelling has grown from the seed to the tree to the forest now. Everyone is talking about stories. And what I was lucky is I could actually go, travel, meet, touch people, feel them as they told their stories. So I just want to say that there are many moments in this, because, you know, it's not easy to remember so many people and so many places, but the moments that I remember is, one is the Human Aid Society, where in Baramulla, where that man had been shot at least 18 times and he was completely filled with plastic surgery. And he called me because he didn't want to leave and he wanted to collect the books and said, I want you to train the college people in taking storytelling in Baramulla. So I had people coming in front and back, all the military guys who seemed to give me protection to go and train. And this was something very heartening for me. I went to Gomukh. And when I reached the top, there were 5 rishis. When the Ganges came out of that cave and it was ice cold, they said, who are you? I said, I'm a Kathakar. Tell us a story. So I told them the story there, freezing cold, but I told them the story there. And then when I went to Sweden, they said, you know, the Nobel People's, that is the Nobel Prize Winners Committee, wants training in storytelling. Nobel Prize? No, oh God. And I did the storytelling for that committee, for those architects. I met Sadhguru because he wanted me to train his students. So when I trained and I finished, I was at his camp, 280 people were there, and Sadhguru, I mean Jaggi Vasudevji, and he called me separately to his room and he said, Geeta, tell me a story. And then in Dayanandji's ashram, Bhagavad Gita, I used to attend the camp every year. The last day along the Ganges, they said, Geeta, you have to do the thank you to Dayanandji and you have to tell a story. I said, I don't know Sanskrit. I'm just a storyteller. I'm not adept. I'm not a literature-based person. No. I'm not, and I cannot do it in front of Dayanandji. And they said, no, that's what he wants. Not too much with knowledge. Just tell a story. And I saw a crow. And I told the story of a crow who was thirsty for knowledge and who used to come and drink the water of the Ganges, listening to Dayanandji's lectures. So everyone was very happy at that camp also. I did a lot of work with Sri Ravi Shankar ji also. I also did a lot of work in South Africa. There was a priest during Nelson Mandela's time. He was burying 16 bodies a day in the church. And he said, I will give you protection. I want you to come and tell a story in the church to the black women. And the black women just cried and they sang hallelujah for me because I told the story. And they wanted one more story. So I kept telling them stories as they cried their heart out. So it was not only as festivals, though I had a lot of different kinds of experiences going to the Scottish Storytelling Festival and to Finland and to Iceland. I went once to train the pharmacy companies because they wanted to tell a story of their medicines. I went to the University of Central Florida to tell a story for the filmmakers. Well, I can go on and on and on, but that was not my intention. So storytelling after all these years, I just felt that the last thing, yes, one more incident that I remembered is there's a place called Douglas, which is 80 miles from Edinburgh. And there was a person called Marion and Colin, and they called me. And it was a huge church, which was built in 1498. And they had a key. It was a huge key. They wanted me to unlock that church. They took me in, and there was a huge chest. And they asked me to put another key. There were two keys, and I opened that, and there were a lot of scrolls of stories. So these are moments that I think is so close to my heart. I can't tell you, and there are many other incidents. Though I wish I had continued the work, the last that I did was with the Santali tribals. I went and stayed with them for 2 whole months. I drank the kanji that they drank, and under the sky, under the night sky, I used to sleep on the rope cots, and they all used to tell me stories. And we set up, I'm very proud of this, 220 learning centers, and they were the first generation learners. So children from this age to the adults come to those centers every day, morning 7 to 10. And who are the trainers? The farmer women. And they go to work after 10 o'clock. And I'm so happy. This was such a gratifying moment for me. Yeah, so a lot of things that, and sometimes now when I recall, I don't know how I managed to travel to spread. Maybe it had to spread. Maybe Kathalaya, my organization's name, has a destiny of its own, and it had to reach out to so many places. Well, without any obstruction, it happened until the last 2 years. I had to convert everything online. Well, it's not the same. I can't feel you. I can't smell you. I can't feel the energy in that room where I train. I can't go to that hut and sleep with those women. So it's a lot of things that we are losing out when we do something online. So this is the way forward. Though I wish this COVID, I've been praying every day. I've been telling COVID, come and sit down and don't trouble anyone, okay? So I've been trying to offer him coffee and tea and a lot of things. I think he might listen, you never know. So I'm sending my meditative prayers to him every day, he or she. I'm sorry, I don't want to be very patriarchal about this. I mean, it can be a she also, I don't know. But I think I just want the COVID to go away, because I say there are storytellers, there are listeners, they all want to be free. And what is the final? To have peace, isn't it? Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. To have that peace within our hridaya. And Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Punaptu, Sahaviryam Karavahavahai, Tejasvina Vidhi Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sarve Jana Sukhino Bhavatu. Right? So that is what we are praying for. And thank you all very much. I also have one last thing to think. We are down again to 6,000 rupees in our trust. I've been very honest with you. That's how we started. So I'm going to now start a new thing on how to again fundraise and build my Kathalaya. I wish that through all this lonely journey that I've had, that the government or anyone could have come forward to help us. And I'm hoping that people will come forward to continue this tradition. I want to make the Kathalaya Foundation for Storytellers as a grant organization, like how India Foundation funded me. So I want to build up the corpus. I'm appealing to everyone so that my role will be very different in funding storytellers and funding the arts, rather than just bragging about my own story. Thank you all for listening. Thank you so much. Thank you, Deepa. Thank you, Shivkumar ji and Dr. Nagaraj, and all the team and all my listeners, and for just giving me this beautiful platform of half an hour. Woo, I think I've overshot the time, or I haven't, I hope not. So thank you all very much. I wanted to just show a very 1 second the share screen, if I can. Do I have a minute? Okay.
Yeah, please.
The radio that was in my house. I still listen to the radio, but not this radio, of course. This is when I was born, and thanks to Tai, whom I call her, Lakshmikant's mother, who delivered me. So quite a roundish baby, not bad at all for home delivery. I think this was a park where we used to go. My father used to take us everywhere, and this is the time when I got married. This is exactly the sari that I was wearing when he came to see me. So that's when I got married. I was hardly about 20 when I got married. So that's thing. And this is what I call as a turning point. So just I put, this is, if you see this particular picture, this was the first one that in Times of India that appeared. This is the first workshop I had. You can see there are about 8 kids. This was 1996 when he called the heading as the Cat of Nine Tails. It's still there in our center. Okay. And this is the latest books, a book that I've brought out now. I've made a little bit of my foreword, little introductions to each of the stories that I've collected from around the world. It will be available in the market after 24th. Penguin was very nice to bring this book out. This is when we formed the International Storytelling Network among the world, the first storytelling network that was formed actually. This is the Human Aid Society where I went to in Baramulla. And this is a lot of work that was done with the Kopal tribals and with the Kodaikanal tribals, and a lot of work with the tribals that I've done. I also set up in 40 government schools in Tamil Nadu, resource centers. These people are working on it. This is Donald Smith, who was a great, great person who actually passed a bag around to collect money for me to send me back to London, because I didn't have money to come back by the train. So here he is, and ever since he's been calling me every year to his storytelling center, I mean every alternate year. And this is the Swedish troupe. You won't believe it, the Karnataka government, I'm sad to say, there was an exchange program between the Karnataka government and India, and 4 of us were selected. You see 4 of us, 3 men, and I was the only woman. So the Ministry of Culture, she said, Karnataka government will give some money and we will put in some money and we can have an 8-year contract. Now, not even 1 year, sorry to say that Karnataka government paid any money for me to go to Sweden, but this lady, Ulva, she was so wonderful. She said, we'll bear your charges. And all the 8 years, they were the one who funded us. So how can I not be grateful to them? Why is it that we don't look at it as the way they look at it? Yeah, so that is how I also established centers around the world. Sorry, thank you very much. So they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but not any more. Thank you for listening and traveling with me. Thank you so much.
It was such a it was a blessing to listen to your journey, Geeta ji. All of us know you. This is the first time maybe some of us are meeting you in person, but we know you because of your work, and I'm sure all of us have read about your work. It's an honor to have you on this platform and listen to you. And nothing that I summarize or paraphrase from what you said can be equal to what you actually narrated. The real rich experience is what it is. I think when you went to Gaumukh and when you told the story, a different Ganga started flowing, and I think continue to flow forever in the minds of and hearts of all of us. I'm sure ours is a civilization of stories, and that will not
Absolutely.
at all. And we will continue to have this tradition being upheld by luminaries like you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.